This was an absolute fight.
We'll show how healthcare glitches are costing families across Tampa Bay. We'll explain why the president's approval rating varies a lot from poll to poll. And we'll show how hackers are tapping into webcams across Tampa Bay.
You know, the moment you connect something to the internet, it immediately becomes a target out there for anybody.
Plus, we'll break down the raucous town halls and the crackdown on illegal immigration with Congressman Dennis Ross and Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd. This is Money, Power, and Politics. We'll start with healthcare problems because Florida Blue is now the only company to provide Obamacare coverage across the entire state, and hundreds of customers are filing complaints.
Yeah, there you go.
This is my girl.
Janice Dubbin recovered from a blow to the head. Her partner Bill Nyland found her face down on the tile.
I didn't know what had happened. And so...
Yeah, because I passed out.
She spent days in the hospital, then took another hit when she got home. She got a letter from Florida Blue stating that her health insurance had been canceled with no explanation. She says she never received a bill from Florida Blue, but the bills from her hospital stay started pouring in.
Yeah, cancellation notice, and they weren't going to take care of anything.
How much did those bills add up to when they said...
$40,000.
In Tampa, Anita Kuhn had a mishap of her own.
I fell downstairs, hit my head on the concrete floor, and I hit my ribs on the toolbox.
She had signed up and paid for her policy through Florida Blue, but she did not get a card and did not show up in the system.
Well, they could see that I'd made the payment.
And so she paid hundreds of dollars for scan, x-rays, and the doctor's visit and was told she may not get that money back.
She told me that because I did a self-pay on the CAT scan and the x-ray, that they won't reimburse me probably.
And after paying for the policy she said she couldn't use at the time, she got more bills from Florida Blue for different amounts she could not explain. $424, $1491, $1186, $762.
Oh, nope, January 27th. I forgot about that one. That one was $1,949. It's getting worse.
And she says the helpline was not much help.
It was probably a good 40 hours.
40 hours.
This has been going on since December 28th.
40 hours
yes,
on the
of my
toll-free
time.
number.
Yes.
And we found Anita and Janice are not alone. The state's Department of Financial Services received 615 complaints from Florida Blue customers from January 1st through last week. That includes billing and customer service issues, and 11 people like Janice who say their account showed up as canceled.
This was an absolute fight.
Just to get
reinstated.
Florida Blue did reinstate her policies, so her bills should be taken care of. But the doctors from the hospital don't know that yet because they're still sending her bills. Well, Florida Blue says it's had a surge in customers as other companies pulled out of the marketplace. A spokeswoman says only a very small percentage of its members are having these kinds of issues, apologizes for those who are, and is working to resolve their complaints. You'll find the full statement from Florida Blue on fox13news.com. So let's bring in our consumer expert, Sarbani Banerjee. Sarbani, look, in a general sense, if people get sick and they can't verify their insurance or they have some kind of issue, what should they do?
So the first thing that people need to realize is it an emergency? You know, there's actually a federal law that says an emergency room has to treat you, at least make sure that you are stable and decide whether or not your condition is an emergency before they can deny, you know, any sort of coverage. So that's something to keep in mind. If it's a more pressing long-term issue, there are a lot of different things that you can do, but you need to remember, you can always refile a claim and you can always appeal an insurer's decision.
And there are sites you can go to for more perspective.
With the situation that you were looking at, right? This woman was getting bill after bill after bill from a hospital, so that's pretty scary. In a case like that, you want to make sure that it is documented by the hospital. Call up that clerk and say, look, I'm working to resolve this with my insurer, so don't send it to collections, because otherwise, you know what that is, a hit on your credit. You don't want that bill to show up. So if you're super, super overwhelmed by the whole thing, there are a couple different sources. First of all, this is some information on the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act. You can just put that right into a search engine and it'll tell you, look, they have to take care of you at the emergency room right away if you don't have insurance or you need to work something out. Another site that I like is the Patient Advocate Foundation. Here you're able to look up and get information about different ways to file a claim and to then appeal a claim. Similarly, the Alliance of claims assistance. That's going to give you some different resources to do that. But the bottom line, you have to be patient. You have to be, you can't give up, because this is going to take a lot of phone calls, but you can always appeal a claim.
Sir Bonnie, thank you for your time.
You got it.
And please check out our YouTube channel for an in-depth look at the issues with Obamacare. Search for Craig Patrick's Money, Power, and Politics and click subscribe. You can also catch up on our special reports, which brings us to tonight's investigation of hackers who watch people right here in Tampa Bay through their own webcams. Here's Merissa Lynn.
These days, security cameras are almost everywhere. They're inside our homes, offices, schools, and daycares. We count on them to keep a watchful eye while we're away. But what if the one thing we relied on for security actually did more harm than good?
You know, the moment you connect something to the internet, it immediately becomes a target out there for anybody. This is a new way of extorting people.
Even when you're not looking, someone could be watching you. Websites like this one called instacam.org find loopholes to break into the same camera you've set up for your protection.
They're integrated into everything.
There are thousands of unsecure cameras streaming on this website. Cybersecurity expert Steve Hasselbeck says just about anybody can locate those loopholes for misuse.
How easy is it? Well, the tools are already out there to do it. It's just somebody who wants to with the time and effort to make it happen.
And it happens a lot. Thanks to a simple search feature on Instacam, I was able to pull up cameras found in the Tampa Bay area, along with the exact addresses of some of those camera locations, like this one. At USF, it shows what appears to be a student working on an assignment. We blurred the face to protect that student's privacy. When we showed this to the university, USF responded quickly by shutting the camera down and reviewing its entire camera network. USF released a statement saying IT staff will continue to actively monitor the network for vulnerabilities to prevent this from occurring in the future. I was also able to track down an orthodontic office in Manatee County. Though they declined to comment, this surveillance camera shows patients walking in and out of the office. This kind of hacking isn't just limited to your home and office security cameras. It could literally be staring you in the face. Cameras are in your computers, your laptops, your cell phones, and even in that video game console sitting in your family room.
So what if they could hack that system, get control of that camera, and now they can do lots of things with that. Now they can not just see you, they can record you, and once they have that recording, they can post that out onto the internet, which is exactly what's happening.
But who's watching these cameras and why? Motives range from voyeurism to extortion. And one of the scary parts of all of this, once it's on the internet, it's there for good.
You can try and have it taken down, but once something's on the internet, it's up there forever. So how concerned should we be? Extremely concerned.
So how can you protect yourself from hackers? Well, here are some ways. When you're in the market for a security camera, buy a brand name. In this case, a cheaper deal isn't a better deal. Lower cost cameras won't provide the security patches you will need during the course of the camera's life. Replace your camera every 2 years. And if you can, change the password and do it immediately.
Okay, coming up, we're going to debate the new rules on immigration enforcement with Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd.
That's not a problem. It's an epidemic.
Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd has begged the feds to ramp up deportations for years to find illegal immigrants who commit crimes and get them out of the country.
She was prostituting herself. She told us upon her arrest that she was worried that Trump would deport her. Hey, President-elect Trump, here's one you can put on your list.
The Trump administration is adding 5,000 Border Patrol agents and 10,000 Immigrations and Custom Enforcement agents, and the feds will focus on illegal immigrants convicted or charged with crimes. But since living here illegally is a crime in itself, some critics fear mass deportation. Others fear it could hurt farmers who say they cannot find Americans to do the work they need.
They really didn't take anybody's job.
Because the Americans aren't working in the fields. That I'm going to tell you.
All right, Sheriff Grady Judd, thank you for joining us.
It's my honor to be here with you.
You've seen a lot of the pushback on these new federal guidelines focused on people saying, wait a minute, you have people who may have come here illegally, many of them by no fault of their own as young children. They get charged maybe with a minor infraction, not even convicted. They can get deported. What say you?
That's not our focus at all. We know that there are people here that illegally, and they come here specifically to traffic in drugs, to traffic in firearms. They're very violent, very dangerous. That's our focus. The person who came here illegally to live the American lifestyle, where they and their children are behaving, they're no place on our radar. We've got so much work to do to get these criminal, illegal aliens out of here. They need to relax and take a deep breath. They're not even our focus.
The new guidelines give local law enforcement more power, as I read them. What then does that mean for you in Polk County? What will you change? What more will you do?
Here's what we'll do. When we arrest someone and they come to the county jail, we will continue, as we always have, report them to Immigrations and Customs. If Immigrations and Customs says, we want this person to deport because they've committed a very violent or a dangerous crime or a big drug crime, then we'll put an ICE hold on them to give them time to come over from the office to pick them up. We will not be in the streets going to people's neighborhoods, going into people's houses. They need to take a deep breath and relax. That's not our focus at all. But they have no right being here in the first place because they're illegal aliens, and the ones we're focusing on are very dangerous, very violent criminals who are committing felonies.
Sheriff Judd, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right, coming up, I'll explain why President Trump's approval rating is all over the map depending on the poll, and we'll debate Obamacare with Senator Bill Nelson and Congressman Dennis Ross. Well, President Trump's approval rating has either dropped 38% or risen to 55%, depending on which poll you read. So then how can that be? Well, let's start with our pollster Matt Towery's take on polls.
It's sort of like everybody just said, oh, well, the polls were wrong. Let's go back to looking at the polls.
The numbers for most of the polls were off last year and may be off again this year as well. But they can still give us a sense of movement from week to week. And most of the polls show Trump has been losing ground since he took office. And his approval rating in some well-known polls was already at an all-time low for an incoming president. But Trump prefers to cite the Rasmussen poll, especially the one from last week.
Our new Rasmussen poll just came out just a very short while ago, and it has our approval rating at 55% and going up.
So then how can some polls like Rasmussen put Trump's approval rating in the mid-50s while most others show him tanking? Well, the short answer is that they survey a different set of people.
We make the argument that by asking likely voters, you get a better gauge of the electorate.
Trump does much better when you survey just registered or likely voters instead of all adults. In other words, people who vote tend to like Trump more than people who don't vote. In measuring approval, many of the long-running polls like to survey all adults because it gauges the mood of the American people, whether they vote or not. And there's another reason why numbers vary from poll to poll. Trump's support also tends to drop when real people ask the questions, as opposed to automated robocalls. We don't know exactly why that is. Some pollsters have speculated that since Trump is controversial, some of his supporters will not admit to supporting him when a real person asks for fear of offending that person on the other end of the phone.
I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible.
Gallup is one of the most cited polls, and it's close to the average, which puts Trump's approval rating in the low 40s. There are two ways to look at that number. First, yes, it is unusually low for a new president, but it's still not far from former President Obama's average of 47.9%. In such a divided nation, a president's approval in the 40s could be the new normal, along with the protests from the raucous town halls Democrats faced as they changed health care under Obama to the raucous town halls Republicans now face as they plan to change health care under Trump. We're going to head over now to Congressman Dennis Ross. Thank you, sir, for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
What percentage would you guess these voices expressing such concern in the town hall meetings represent
organized protesters versus real people? What percentage?
At least half of them are organized protesters. Look, we saw the big bus outside. It was a charter bus. We know that those that couldn't fit on the bus followed in their cars, and that's okay. We were given warnings that they were going to come and they were going to be disrupted. They had signs that were pre-printed. They were standing room only, and they would shout over here and shout over there. But it's okay. We understand why they're doing it for the sake of protesting, but for those of us that want to have the reasonable dialogue about the issues, it makes it difficult for them because they don't have a chance to be heard.
The president first said we're going to get a replacement for Obamacare shortly after price is confirmed, and then he later said maybe into next year sometime. When will it be?
Well, this is the deal. Now, you have to understand, this is what I tried to say the other night. We need to make sure we protect pre-existing conditions. We don't have any caps on lifetime benefits, and we keep those 26 and under on their parents' plan. So you'll do it on a piecemeal basis on most of the replacement. A lot of it can be done through the HHS Secretary, Dr. Price, when he says, okay, I'm going to accept all these different types of plans to be sold on the market for health insurance. This gives choice and competition. That'll help the replacement. But the bulk of the replacement, and why the president says it's going to take probably into next year, is because it's going to require Senate Democrats to come on board and pass those parts of the legislation that allow us to have a full replacement.
And if they don't?
You know, I think that those Democrats do so at their own peril.
And if they still don't, even if it's at their own peril, you don't get a replacement?
Well, we do get a replacement. That's just it. People are forgetting that billions of dollars of premium are on the table. Insurance companies are in the business to make money, but to also insure. They're not going to walk away from those premiums. So if Tom Price says you can provide all these premiums, we can provide tax credits, refundable, advanceable, meaning you can have it now, that subsidizes the people who need it most, they can then go out and buy the policy that they want to have, and there's going to be competition instead of one size fits all. I'd love to see us do more, and I think we will, but it's going to take convincing of those Democratic senators to come on board with us.
Congressman Ross, thank you.
Thanks, Craig.
Well, Senator Bill Nelson is one of those 10 Democrats up for re-election in states that Trump won, and Merissa caught up with him at the Tampa Convention Center.
Well, thank goodness the people are expressing themselves.
Senator Bill Nelson is the only Florida Democrat in statewide office. Republican Governor Rick Scott may run against him next year, and Nelson could face some challengers from within his own party, all in a midterm election when a lot of Democrats don't vote. Simply put, Senator Nelson is gearing up for the fight of his political life, and so he is very glad to see Republicans getting an earful at their town hall meetings.
Finally, it's dawning on folks. They are upset, they're mad, they like their health insurance that they have, and they don't want somebody to take it away from them. So thank goodness this is happening.
To win re-election, Nelson will have to fire up Democrats who were not motivated last year, and he knows it.
Senator, why did the Democrats lose Florida, and what can be changed and fixed heading into 2018?
Well, I think you're already seeing it change. You're seeing this energy. People do not like what they see with Donald Trump. He's so unpredictable.
And Nelson is particularly concerned about Russia and Trump's interest in working with its president, Vladimir Putin. He's also the ranking member on the cyber subcommittee that's investigating Russian interference in our election. The White House denied claims that Trump's campaign coordinated with Russia, but Nelson is still looking into it.
Do you believe the then president-elect communicated and coordinated with Russia to meddle in the election? Do you believe that?
I think there are plenty of evidences that there was contact between the Trump campaign and Russia. If we find connection between the Trump campaign directly with the Russians and the Russian government, then that's going to be a very explosive detail.
Now, coming up, we're going to take a closer look at the healthcare town halls in Tampa Bay. Well, Republicans who want to replace Obamacare are getting a lot of pushback this week, and Evan Axelbank shows us how it's playing out here in Tampa Bay.
We are the only country, non-third world country, that doesn't have decent health care for everyone.
I think it's the right thing to do to repeal and replace,
Bilirakis, like other GOP members of Congress, campaigned several times on repealing Obamacare. Yet many have been confronted by constituents in South Carolina, Wisconsin, and Arizona who say that Obamacare has helped them. Perhaps this moment with Gus Bilirakis illustrates how tangled Obamacare politics are.
If it's good enough for us, why isn't it good enough for you?
I'm on Obamacare myself. The staff is also on Obamacare.
So time now for Evan's Corner. Look, Evan, you see these town hall meetings, they're sort of 8 years ago in reverse.
Yeah, they are 8 years ago in reverse, and I think one of the things that you're seeing is it's always easier to talk about repealing than to repeal.
So you have polls putting the president's approval rating in the low 40s. Those same polls put former President Obama's approval ratings maybe in the mid to high 40s. Not a great deal of difference between President Trump and President Obama. What does that tell you about our nation?
Well, I think one of the things it shows is that during a campaign, everyone's looking at the president and looking at the people who are in the middle of the campaign in a much different lens than they do when they're governing. Suddenly, when they have to do things, get things done, when they have to govern, when they have to kind of be responsible for the fate of the nation, things get more difficult for them. You know, when he won re-election very narrowly over Hillary Clinton, his numbers were, the popular vote was, what, 46% for him? Now he's down at about 40. How much lower can he go than that? Probably not much. His
well, then if that's his floor, maybe he keeps playing to that low 40-something percent.
Sure. And then when he's back in a campaign in 4 years, which he's already appears to have filed to run.
Appears he has.
So once he's back in that, then all he needs to do is find a couple more points, which he did against Hillary Clinton, and then, hey, I'm looking good for re-election.
Evan, thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
And we want to thank all of you for joining us. We'll see you again next week.